We had this initial intense training at SKO last year where we were fully immersed in it. We had pre-work and we had some long days and a lot of role playing and things like that. But that wasn't the end of the journey, it was the beginning of the journey.
And then after the event, that's where I think leaders, their work really comes in. There's a ton of time and effort spent on these SKOs. I can't tell you how many of them I've attended. And people just, all this time, effort, and initiatives are rolled out and then, okay, go at it. What are we trying to get out of this? And what are you going to put in place to reinforce these initiatives going forward? Are you going to put some gamification around it so that it's front and center and, the sales team is focused on it? And do you have a strategy to keep yourself and your team accountable, to it going forward so that you achieve the outcomes the company's trying to achieve?
Whatever you choose to do as a CRO to drive transformation, you've got to be 100% bought into that. And the entire organization has to know very clearly that this is the priority. And then it's not enough for you just to be bought into it. Everybody above you needs to be bought into it too, right? So if your CEO isn't on the same page as you, the organization's going to see that. And they're not going to be as bought into it as you are.
You can't delegate your leadership. You cannot delegate your leadership. So you own it. And if we get our mind right on that, let's talk about the rest of it.
What is it that we tactically are going to go execute on, right? And how are we going to do that? And then last but not least, some expectations as a result of people buying into the why and understanding the objectives, some expectations at two levels. At the leadership level, that leaders are actually going to change their operating rhythm to affect whatever that change is, right? Because if you say we're going to change and then leaders don't change their operating rhythm, nothing changes. Because you've told people that they should change things, but you haven't made it okay for them to do it. You're only making it okay for them to do it if your leadership changes their operating model. And then now you've built the right to create accountability at the individual contributor level that says, here's why, here's what we've put in place to help you do that. Here's how we're coaching and running the business to affect that change. You now have a responsibility to be a part of the change.
Just a note of caution, you're implementing sales training, you're implementing a lot of stuff. If you don't equip your sales leaders with the ability to coach and develop those skills, it dies because you don't have the hearts and minds of the leaders. Not because they're not good people, not because they're not motivated. It's because we haven't given them the skills to coach and develop what we want progressed from skills from the sellers.
Once the company sees that the board, the founders, the CEO, all of the executive team are bought into this as the biggest transformation initiative that you're driving, then everybody gets bought into it. And that's how you actually make change.
First thing you got to do for sales managers is you got to make it part of their job. And you got to make it an expectation, and you got to make it ownership. And I'm not talking about compliance. So many companies think about this as a compliance thing. It's not that, it's bright spots. The best coaches and developers of talent, they begin with the why. They think about, first of all, why is my company doing this? It's strategic for me. It's strategic for my employees. I've attached myself to the why. And now I'm going to focus on coaching and developing my people.
We're used to working on Zoom, but I think the biggest shift that we had to make was becoming much more asynchronous in how we engaged with one another, right? It became less feasible to schedule forecast calls in local time zones, to have QBRs where everybody flew in and got together and talked about their deals and so on and so forth. We really had to start relying on Salesforce, on our CRM tools, as this common language that really enabled us to not miss a beat and remain very, very productive, even though we can't get together in person and everything is shut down.
Think about building what we call an MOR, management operating rhythm, which should be around sales planning, sales talent, and visibility. Should be the key processes that you should have in there. Okay, what are the critical actions? What's the frequency? What tools are we going to use? And most importantly, how are we going to measure it?
How is success going to be defined going forward? Companies are evolving so fast, in our world. What is the upcoming year going to look like? What can the sales team do to contribute? Communicating that is really key so that the whole team is aligned going forward.